Thank you for your patience. We have our next team up here. Give an applause to Zoë and Leandra.
All right, hi all. Can you hear me okay? All right. My name is Zoë Hartsfield. I run executive presence, influencer marketing, and employee advocacy at Apollo. That's a mouthful, so we basically call it Evangelism here. I'm joined by my CRO, Leandra Fishman. Leandra, do you want to give us a quick intro, tell us why we're all here today, and like a 1-second spiel on what Apollo is?
Am I on? Can you hear me?
Can
you hear me? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Zoe. Bonjour, je m'appelle Leandra. That's about the extent of my French. So nice to see everyone. A little bit about my background. I've been in sales for over 35 years. I've sold everything from enterprise software to consumer hardware to manufacturing services. I've done it at 10-person startups all the way to Fortune 500 companies. What I'm passionate about is building teams and solving customer problems. And excited to be here today to talk about building executive identity, Zoe, which you have helped me do. So that's been so much fun over the last year and a half together. But really excited to also represent Apollo. How many of you are familiar with Apollo.io? Okay. Well, good. About half. We got some selling to do here, Zoe.
Oh, gosh.
But excited. Apollo, for those of you who are not familiar with us, we are a sales intelligence and data engagement platform, and we are here to help customers generate pipeline and close and win deals.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Instead of just talking with each other or talking at you for a really long time about building an executive presence program, we want to make this really interactive. So by the time you leave here, you should be able to walk away knowing how to build one internally at your company. I'm going to interview Leandra about her experience working with me, and we invite you to follow along with us with the resources that'll be provided on the screen. Do you want to tell them a little bit about what they're going to learn?
Yeah, it's going to be a great session. For the next 15 minutes, we really packed a lot in. One, we want to explain what brand executive building is. We want to help you understand how you identify your own brand, and then make sure we give you a framework, and then how to apply that, and give you a challenge at the end of the session so you can go help build your own brand.
Thanks. So really quickly, can you raise your hand if you have posted on LinkedIn in the last 90 days? Okay, a few folks. What about the last 60 days? This week? What if you've never posted on LinkedIn anything other than like marketing collateral or something that your company, okay, that guy, all right. That's okay. Regardless of where you're at in the journey, you're gonna walk away from this talk either knowing how to start building your brand on LinkedIn to build pipeline, or if you're already doing it, we're gonna help you refine that process. So first, let's define executive branding, Leandra. In short, it's really just the intentional curation of a personal brand from an executive's profile. But executives are super duper busy. Like, you guys are so busy. I'm curious, Leandra, would you mind telling everybody a little bit about how we came to collaborate at Apollo and what the results from our time working together have been?
Well, I think I hadn't posted in a year until I met you. So if anyone hasn't posted yet or doesn't post frequently, don't worry. But Zoe, I remember when I first met you, I was like, she's cool, and it'll be fun to work together. But I was very, very reluctant to do this program with Zoe because I said, first of all, Zoe, I don't do social media at all. Facebook, X, the chats, the Instagram, all of the things, I do none of it. I'm actually an introvert. So I said, I don't think I'm really cut out for social media. The second thing I said, Zoe, I have nothing interesting to say. Really. I don't think that I have anything interesting to say, so what are people going to want to read that I'm going to post? But I really felt like as an executive, especially as an executive in a sales tool, it was my job to help get the word out about Apollo. And so I was open to helping her teach me how to be able to post content. And I think what was really interesting, though, that hooked me in is Zoe said, you're not just building a brand for Apollo, you're building your own brand for the future that you get to take with you. And I hadn't really thought about it in that kind of context. And so that was when I said, all right, I'll give it a try.
And Leandra is very, very humble. Just so you know, since we've been working together for the last year, she's been named a CRO or sales leader to watch on at least a dozen lists. She's been invited on over 35 podcasts, had 10 plus in-person speaking engagement invites, gotten nearly 2 million impressions from her content, and has driven nearly $1 million in pipeline just from casually posting on LinkedIn. So we're gonna walk you through how we work together and teach you how to do it yourself. That's the plan today. But looking at these results, you might be like, that has to take a lot of time and a lot of investment. So Leandra, can you talk a little bit about what it takes to get this up and running? Like realistically, what did it take to start and maintain your brand with me?
I remember when we first had this conversation, I was like, wow, this is going to take like 4 hours a week, and I just don't have that much time. And Zoe's like, it's not. So I think we initially spent a little bit of time, kind of developing our brand tone together. But really, it's 30 minutes that I spend writing content, and another 30 minutes that then I spend posting into somebody's comments, answering things that come into my DM. But I think what's really cool out of it is I have met so many interesting people, and I now read LinkedIn way more than I ever did before. And so it's been cool on both sides. But I would say probably an hour is at most is what I spend doing it a week.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. You've not only built a brand, but you've built a network and a community around you of other sales leaders, people we sell to, but also people you may go work with someday in the future. But let's be real, there was probably a little bit more time invested up front, you think?
Well, I think that first couple of sessions that we had, it took us a few weeks to tweak in our brand identity, which was really who I am, what I'm about, what I want to talk about. And that was, I think, the most fuzziest part for me is I didn't know what I should write about. And I think, Zoe, you really helped me get clear on, okay, who am I? What skill set do I have? Who do I want to speak to? And what are the type of messages that I want to share?
Yeah. So whether you have a me on your team or you're doing this totally independently, this is exactly the process that we use at Apollo. You can use it yourself. I have done this with dozens of executives at Apollo, outside of Apollo. And so whether you're partnering with somebody on your content team or doing it solo, this is the process that we use and would recommend if you wanted to set this up internally. So let's go through it super quickly. First things first, you're gonna complete a brand identity framework, which is gonna tell you the who, the what, and the how of creating compelling thought leadership content that's going to drive pipeline as it aligns to your personal and business goals. We're gonna actually do this together in a minute. I'll give you a worksheet, there'll be a QR code, we can do it in real time together. Next, you wanna identify some obvious moments where you can create content. Leandra said in the very beginning, one of her biggest reservations was, I don't have anything to say. That's not true. You have tons of great stuff to say all the time. You're constantly teaching, coaching, educating. You're in internal meetings, you're training reps, you're having one-on-ones, and there's valuable content that maybe feels old hat or obvious to you that would be totally net new and valuable to the masses. So what are some of those content moments, inspiration moments that we've come together to source content ideas for you?
That was the challenge for me because I'm like, how do I take 35 years worth of data or experience and then give you the data and the information to then help me curate my own message? But really it was just, I think I sent you some webinars that I had attended, some team meetings, I sent you some notes. I've written a few things in the past, and so you could hopefully help me get a feel for my tone, my style, how I want to communicate, but the things that I thought were important to talk about.
Yeah, you probably have frameworks, templates, work you've done in the past just lying around in your drive. That's where I would start. Any call recordings where you were like, oh, that was a really interesting discussion, or if you've been on a podcast, all of those can be transcribed and then turned into thought leadership content. And I would encourage you, you don't have to start from scratch. You don't have to start from zero. Take stuff you've already done, and that's a great launch pad for some of this content inspiration. And if you're partnering with somebody on your content team, just set up a meeting cadence. Leandra and I meet, once every other week for 30 minutes, but do what works for you. And if you don't have somebody, if you're doing this all by yourself, time block 30 minutes every other week to sit down and brain dump some of these ideas, collect some of these source materials, and it's really gonna make the content writing process a lot simpler. Then create a content calendar. At the end of the day, consistency is more important than frequency. You don't need to write 5 times a week. You don't need to be on any social platforms for 10 hours a day. Just say, I'm gonna post X times a week on these days. I'm gonna, spend some time commenting and engaging. And that's how you're gonna start building your network. And then finally, you wanna set some realistic goals. You should take a baseline of where your brand is at today and then measure the impact over the next 3 to 6 months. Some of those baseline metrics would be things like follower growth, how many speaking invitations are you getting? Is there any direct referral traffic coming from your profile to your website? You can use UTMs for this. You can also just track positive sentiment. I have like a little swipe file on my drive of DMs people have sent to Leandra being like, I found Apollo because of your post. That was so interesting. Will you come speak at this event? I saw your piece of content. I saw you named on this list. Would you come speak at our event? So there are a lot of ways to track this. I think that there is quantitative and qualitative data to take a look at, but you just want to know where you're starting at. But I mean, for you, Leandra, what do you think is like, if they were to focus on one of these pieces of information, what's the most important for them to work on today?
I think the most important thing was the brand identity piece, because I didn't even know where to start to understand like who I am and what I wanted to talk about. And even though it's been cool to be recognized in a lot of these places, I was doing all of that stuff beforehand. So it just goes to show you that you can be the best brand in the world, but if no one knows about you, you're not going to get connected in and be included in some of the great things that now I've had a chance to get, connected into.
I'm a big believer that visibility precedes ability. Like you said, you could be the best at what you do, and if nobody knows you, your mediocre competitor is gonna win that business. So let's make sure that we get you out there so that you can win those opportunities. That said, why don't we talk everybody through a brand identity framework right now? I always say you should revisit this probably every 6 months or so, and now feels as good a time as any to look at yours. If you want to scan that QR code, there is a downloadable document. Just make a copy. You can do this in real time with us right now, or you can save it, do it later. It's pretty simple. We'll walk you through it right now. That said, this is an exercise I run with every single executive I work with on executive branding. So we're gonna jump into it. You need to know what, who, and how to speak to your audience to build a consistent brand that's gonna translate into topics, personas, and tone. So we're gonna pick about three to five in each category. Let's talk topics, Leandra. There is an intersection between your passions, the product we sell, and the problems our prospects are facing. That's pretty much where you should be creating content all day long, in my opinion. And so, Leandra, in that intersection, what are a few topics you think you could speak to almost anybody about for maybe like an hour?
Yeah, it really felt like the model that we're in today is really a PLG model. And so having the experience of being able to talk about sales and product-led growth, I thought was a great conversation to have with companies. Also, leadership development I'm passionate about, and so wanting to be able to figure out how I can help others leaders develop in their stages of their career, as well as just general sales excellence. I mean, I know it seems unsexy to talk about forecasting, but forecasting is a core fundamental, and there's a lot of people that could really use tips on it, so sales excellence is top of mind for me.
That's so good. And I think we need to also talk pretty explicitly about audience. You have to know who you're speaking to. We can't be everything to everybody all the time. We have to get really clear on who we help and who we're talking to, because that's going to fundamentally change the conversation. You're having a conversation with a CRO about forecasting is going to look really different than a conversation you're having with an AE about forecasting tactically. It's going to change it entirely. And so when you're writing, you can write something entirely different. And that's why the audience piece is going to be really important. So thinking about your audience, I like to pick a peer, a prospect, and a potential mentor. Same thing, 3 to 5 people. In your case, probably, you're further along in your career, maybe you pick a mentee instead. But, who do you most often speak to in your career, and who do you typically write to today?
Yeah, well, I'm a salesperson at heart, and I've been selling my whole career, so I obviously have a lot of experience from the perspective of every single level of a salesperson. But then also, once you have that opportunity to get into management, I'm really passionate about great leadership. So how can I help frontline managers, either sales reps that want to be frontline managers or are frontline manager today, continue to excel in their career? And then obviously, I have an executive level perspective on strategy, on how we think about winning customers and how we think about expanding businesses and building companies. And so I'd like to be able to talk at that level too.
That's so good. And I think about that, like when you've got your topics and your audience, you can kind of like swap between the two. You could speak about leadership development to a frontline manager, but that conversation is going to look different than a leadership development conversation with a VP. So I love that. And finally, tone. This one's really the how you deliver that information and how you want to come across. People say to write like you talk, but what does that even mean? I think you can write how you want to be perceived. I also think you can ask people that you know, how do I come across? And that'll really give you a starting point. But Leandra, how do you like to come across on LinkedIn when you're sharing thought leadership content?
This one was really important to me because I'm just one woman with one opinion, and I don't think I know everything, and I love to learn from other people, and so I just want to share my perspective, but do it in a way that's really authentic and genuine to who I am, but also be helpful and encouraging. I don't need to post just for my own entertainment. I really want to do it if I feel like I'm serving others.
And this entire framework serves as like a lens that you will write literally everything through. It makes it so easy on a day when you're banging your head against the wall and you're like, I don't know what to talk about today. I said I was going to post today and I have nothing to say. You know your tone is going to stay consistent, and you've got topics and you've got audiences. You say, okay, maybe today I'm going to write to frontline managers about product-led growth. But maybe tomorrow I'm gonna write to VPs of sales about sales excellence. And maybe that post did really well, so I'm gonna keep talking about sales excellence, but I'm gonna write to salespeople next week. There's just sort of this endless matrix of content ideas and opportunities you have. And if you can just keep your tone consistent, you can rotate through the audience and topics, and you're just never really gonna run out of stuff to talk about. So
one of the things, Zoe, I really appreciated in our time together was Zoe would just ask me questions, literally, because I'm like, I have nothing to say today. And she's just like, well, what do you think the most hardest thing is about building a sales team from scratch? And then I was like, oh, well, this is the hardest thing. And so it's just like, when you really force yourself to like take a white paper from scratch, it's a lot harder than saying, oh, okay, what is one thing about one area that I have an opinion on? Any question can spark a great post.
And then you can turn that post into a different post if you just change the audience member or you tweak the topic just ever so slightly. So just know it's a little rough to get started, but once you have this framework, it's just gonna make the launch a lot smoother. So why don't we put this all into practice? Feel free to take a picture of this slide, or I don't know how we would send it to you afterwards, but we can figure that out. This is a challenge I'm gonna leave to anyone. If you wanna start building a executive brand today, this is exactly what I would do. First things first, I would fill out your brand identity framework. You've got that document that we had via the QR code. You're gonna document your starting metrics, things like followers, maybe your average likes, average engagements. If you have never posted, super easy. All of your metrics are 0, so you have nowhere to go but up. And then I would create a posting and engagement schedule. I listed ours below. I recommend a 3x15 plus a 2x15. Spend 15 minutes 3 times a week. Just block it on your calendar to engage with your network. That's gonna be comments, likes, connections. And then write 2 original posts per week. If that feels too overwhelming, do 1 a week. But just keep it consistent and then revisit that post later in the day to engage with those comments. And again, just like do it for 90 days, measure what you've been doing, see how it works for you. And if you take those starting metrics, I guarantee you, if you stick to a schedule for 3 months, you're gonna see some pretty significant results, like some of the results that Leandra saw. So, you know, that's pretty much what we had to share with you today. Leandra, any, closing thoughts? Was it worth it? Would you do it again?
Absolutely. First of all, Zoe, I want to thank you so much for giving me the confidence to use my voice, but also so many of the things that I've had the opportunity to experience, I wouldn't have had without really your guidance and you helping me structure how to be able to share my thoughts and my ideas. I've met, like I said, so many new people. I've been to so many different podcasts and events. And again, I was doing the same thing before I came to Apollo and felt like I was just kind of doing my own thing in the corner a little bit. And now that I have an opportunity to really share, it's been super rewarding. I'd absolutely would do it again. And hopefully now you've instilled the muscle that even in the future, when we're not together, I can still keep it up. But I try not to beat myself up either. Sometimes I'm traveling. I sometimes post consistently, once or twice a week. Other times I'm down, and out for a couple of weeks and just pick it back up and just know that I absolutely can do it. And you've given me the skill set. So thank you.
Thanks. I would just like to call out, Leandra had the expertise long before we worked together. The only thing that changed was that visibility piece. You always had the ability, this is the visibility, this is what's gonna help you get those opportunities and get your name out there, help you build your network, help you build your brand, and you do get to take it with you. So thanks so much for joining us here today. We hope you start building an executive presence on whatever social platforms your customers are hanging out on, and feel free to connect with us. We'd love to know how it goes for you. Reach out in 3 months after you've done this and tell us about your results.
Absolutely, yeah. We challenge you all today to make your first post if you haven't, or get consistent about that schedule. And please reach out on LinkedIn. We'd like to hear how it's going for you. And thank you so much for your time.
Cheers.